you guys went through an incredibly difficult time here. I don't know if I'm understating that, right? With the
Yes.
COVID shutdowns, and I'm sure as everyone realizes, the expo industry just basically imploded. Talk about what that was like for you guys. How was it going through there, and how did you manage to kind of make it through and come out on the other side and still be able to be successful?
It was brutal.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program. I
Well, thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me, Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really great to connect with you. Um, for the audience, if it might be good if you just started out by just giving a little bit of background, a little bit of your history, a little bit of your biography, and maybe talk about a little bit about your company.
Sure, sure. Well, I currently am the founder and chairman of the Expo Group, a company that I founded in 1991. And I have spent the majority of my professional career in the trade show and live event business. Uh, I started my career as a teacher and a coach. I did that for 5 years. And after a couple of children and coaches back then weren't getting paid what they get paid today, I had to find a way to earn some larger amount of income. Let me just say that.
Mm-hmm.
And was only going to do this for a year, and here I am, 40 years plus later.
Wow. What drew your attention or drew your passion or whatever to the expo field? I mean, how did you get an interest in that?
Okay, I wish there was a sophisticated answer, but there isn't, and that's usually true amongst a lot of the people in our industry. We call it the silent industry.
Okay.
There's so many folks that don't know much about it. They'll attend a convention or a trade show, but they don't think about everything, all the planning, the logistics, and things that have gone into it. So for me, when I was in high school, I dated a girl whose father owned a furniture company,
Mm-hmm.
and so he liked me, and so in between semesters when I was in college, he would hire me on and to work in his warehouse, and that was my first exposure to the trade show industry.
Okay.
And from there, even though we did not continue the relationship with his daughter. He and I became friends,
Right.
and we stayed friends. And I coincidentally ran into him, one summer, and said, "Hey, I'd like to come back to work." And he said, "Sure, love to have you," and brought me in as an account executive. I thought I was going to be back and working in the warehouse, but he said. They had an audio visual division at that time
Mm-hmm.
and said, we want you to work in the audio visual division. So that's where I ended. That's where I started.
That's where he started. Was his furniture company, I'm assuming they supplied some of the trade shows that were going on, or did he
Yeah,
like,
rental
okay,
rental furniture for
rental
the
furniture for
yeah,
them?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so just kind of like based on a relationship with a girl, and you were exposed to the field, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as a teacher and a coach, what were you doing there? Were you teaching anything specific? Were you teaching in any kind of area? And was it coaching in like business or what?
No, no, it wasn't coaching in business. It was sports related, primarily football. But
Okay.
I was in three different school districts in 5 years. My goal was to get into the NFL.
Okay.
That was my dream. And so, in order to do that, you move around schools quite frequently.
Right.
And so, the schools that I was at were all in Illinois. And after at the last school I was at, I was there for 3 years,
Hmm.
and that's when I left the industry.
You just kind of felt, hey, I need to really start to move in a different direction here.
Yes,
Chase
yes.
chase the dream, and you realized, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's going in the right direction.
No, it was. It just, financially,
Okay.
when you have, I had two children at the time.
Okay.
I still had student loans. And as I mentioned, earlier, coaches really didn't make that kind of money, nor the teachers for that matter.
Right.
So as far as the subject matters, I mean, you went into a school, whatever was open. So if you taught history, you taught science, health, physical ed, whatever was necessary to get the coaching job.
Right. So it was, teaching was secondary so that you could pretty much coach.
Yeah,
Yeah. How
yeah.
was that for you personally when you had to make that decision, basically shifting, your priorities, something that you've had a dream for a long
Sure.
period of time? What was that like for you?
To shift into a business world,
Yeah.
it was an adjustment. But as I adjusted into it, I mentally looked at business as I would a game. So
Okay.
if you look at business, you have four quarters, and you're measured by those quarters. So that's your scorecard, right? And
Hmm.
so as you go through the year, at the end of the year in business, you usually have some kind of incentive plans, bonus plans. So that's your World Series, that's your Super Bowl,
Okay.
and really you work with people the same way you would with your players,
Hmm.
right? Each player individually has strengths and weaknesses, and you as a teacher, and I looked at myself, I never stopped teaching,
Okay.
um, even within our own company. I'll go in and teach a class now and then on various subjects, and like for example, we have training going on this week, and so after this call, I'm going to go visit them and see if I can contribute a few things
Something.
to help
Yeah.
them. Right? Yeah.
What was it about coaching that drove you to pursue that? And I'm assuming that some of those same desires, you're finding fulfilled in business. Is that fair to say?
It is. It wasn't originally though. I will tell you the thing you miss from business to coaching is the crowds, the cheers,
Okay.
the adrenaline flow,
Yeah.
that window of time for the length of the game, the strategy preparing for it. You have week after week, game after game. Um, those are just personal highs that you have, and of course if you're successful, that adds the layer to it, right?
Hmm.
So but again, in business, in teaching, and in coaching, it's all the same. So it starts with the strategy, and you have to lay out a game plan of
Hmm.
how you're going to achieve that strategy, and then you have to execute, and part of that execution is just learning from that and getting better each week. And so
Hmm.
there's no difference in business, no difference in life, right? There's successes and failures.
Hmm.
And you learn from those, and you hope that in life that you're going to have more successes than failures.
Right.
But it's all in how you handle the failure, right? That's part of that. So learn from it, correct it, and move on.
Hmm. Um, you don't find the same emotion of the crowd,
Yeah,
right?
that was that
Nobody's
was the
cheering for you when you get the big expo or whatever, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is. That was a big adjustment. It took a while. It was not a um, it it took years. I'm
Yeah.
going to be candid with you. It took years. And after I was in business, I was still being recruited to go to different schools, come
Okay.
back. Um, it was tough,
Yeah.
but I believe that we're all born. God's given us a purpose in life,
Hmm.
and so now at my age, when I look back, and my wife and I talk about this frequently, that it's all part of a path that you walk down in the journey of life.
Hmm.
And I believe I'm on the right path. I believe that this was the direction that
Hmm.
God wanted me to go to, the purpose of my life.
Hmm.
So I took a lot of the things that I was doing in teaching and coaching and just applied them to the business world.
Hmm. Um, just looking back real quick before we move into talking a little bit about your company, what was your biggest moment as a coach? Do you have one that you look back and you go, I mean, because I coached some high
Mhm.
school basketball and some soccer and stuff like that. And every once in a while, when I'm laying down on the bed and my mind drifts back and I go, oh my gosh, I just remember that one moment when we almost did this or when we did
Yeah,
that or when we
yeah.
caught the last game winning touchdown or what?
That's interesting. I remember at one school, I was putting in a new defense, and in the first couple of games, we got blown out pretty good. And one of the things I learned from that was that I knew that if we didn't win and things didn't start to click, and even though we went back over those things that we were missing in, but I believed, and I had to get them to believe that once they clicked, we would be awesome. And
Right.
that's probably the moment. And we did, thank the Lord, we did achieve that in game three,
Yeah.
and just went on to keep on winning from there, and really had some shutdowns,
Yeah.
some complete blowouts.
Yeah. What a great story, huh? Of like just being committed and the discipline and the perseverance and the teaching. I mean, all of those things come together in that moment
That's right.
there.
It's a vision. So no different in business. So I, as an owner, people ask me, "Wow, you built a successful company." So for me, I was the visionary.
Hmm.
I did not build it. It was the people who made my vision come to fruition.
Right.
So no different in coaching. So I had this vision of this defense that we felt that it would be successful. That was my vision,
Hmm.
right? And so they were the ones who, once they started believing in it and executed on it, it became their vision, and they made it come to fruition. I
Hmm.
wasn't the player; they were.
Hmm. Um, Let me just dive into that real quick then. Talking about leadership,
Mhm.
obviously one of the jobs of a leader is to be able to communicate a vision in such a way that people will buy into it.
That's correct.
And I think you just said that you found that to be the case. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Well, sure. The from a company perspective, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, from like as you know, as the founder of your company, you have
Mhm.
to be the one, you've got to be the visionary. You got to be the
That's
one that
correct.
says, this is the direction we're going, this is what we want to do.
Right.
And sometimes leaders have difficulty getting people to buy into that vision.
Yeah.
So how have you been able to like, as a leader,
Mhm.
maybe you want to talk about it in terms of the philosophy of leadership that you have or whatever, but what has been successful for you in getting people to buy into your vision for the company and then be able to be passionate about that in such a way that they go out and are able to implement that?
Okay, I'm going to take one step back.
Okay.
All right. Because this was a carryover from my coaching time.
Okay.
And when I was coaching, so we would run the bleachers. And when I was a player, I hated it. I hated running the bleachers. It was brutal. And so when I became a coach, what I did when they were running the bleachers is I was constantly talking to them about what this difference is going to make when we were in the fourth quarter
Right.
and the other team was exhausted and we were going to win championships. And so I kept on, as they were running the bleachers, I kept on talking to them about all this positive things that were going to happen. So it made, I don't want to say that they weren't tired and working hard. They were, but they believed. And of course, then when you start to execute, it becomes automatic.
Right.
They want to work that much harder. That's no different. That's no different in business. So if you have a vision or a mission that you're trying to accomplish, you have to explain to them why, right? And then you're
Hmm.
going to explain to them how.
Hmm.
And that's really the defining moment in any success or failure, right? If they don't believe, or if the how is not working and we don't correct it, then we're going to fail.
Right.
So that's really so why are we doing this? Okay, so that's I think it's important to really get down to the details of it, not just be a management dictate
Hmm.
or leadership dictate. No, you're going to do it this way. Well, that doesn't. You're going to fail on it.
Right.
People want to understand, and they want to learn, and they want to be better. Everyone does. That's just human nature.
Hmm.
They want to be better in life. They want to get an increase in salary. They want to, achieve their incentive plans. And so those are the things that you do. You teach them the why, you teach them the how, and you accept that failure is part of the process. It's not the end game.
Hmm.
So, just to give you something as recent as this week, so one of our top sales guys had failed on a he really felt he was going to get this piece of business, and he worked hard on it, really hard, but he failed, and it was something that he didn't even see coming. And
Hmm.
so, but I just explained to him, you really didn't fail because we didn't get the business, but we didn't lose the business,
Right.
right? And so I look at that as opportunities, right? So opportunities are never lost; they're just given to someone else.
Hmm.
So someone else got that opportunity, but he's going to get another one.
Right.
And so you just have to support your people that way, and not beat them up for not achieving something, because believe me, that was harder on him than it was on our company not getting that business.
Right. Yeah, it seems like you just have a general disposition of positivity and encouragement towards your
Yes,
people.
yes,
And as a coach, even the things that you were doing for your players then, that same disposition really has translated well into your company now.
that's correct. And I refer to that as the platinum rule.
Okay.
So the golden rule, we all know what that is, right?
Right.
Treat everybody like you want to be treated, right? So the platinum rule is to treat them like they want to be treated.
Okay.
So we're all different. We're all wired different. God made us differently, and so to be a good leader, you have to get to know your people. You need to learn their strengths and accentuate those, and not dwell upon the negatives. Maybe you can coach them up a little bit on some of their negatives, but they are who they are. So dwell upon those positives and accentuate those positives, and you're going to have great success.
Right. Um, okay, talk a little bit about your company.
Okay.
You're in the expo, but for people who are not familiar with that whole industry, what exactly do you guys do, and how is it that your company came to be? Like, what were the beginning stages, and how did you kind of get that started?
Sure. So I think most entrepreneurs are visionaries. Um, so there's a difference between a leader and a visionary. Although leaders do, there's a close semblance there, but a visionary is the one who I think are successful entrepreneurs. They look at things differently than others do. And so being in the business that I was and working for the companies I was working for, I just looked at things that I thought could be done and streamlined and made easier for the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I use the same why rule. I would ask for lots of years, like, why do we do it this way? Most of the time I couldn't get a good answer. Well, that's the
Mm-hmm.
way it's always been done. Okay. Well, did you ever think about this? That would never work. So you always, as an entrepreneur, you always get all those negatives.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of people in the beginning will tell you why it won't work and why
Right.
it's silly, and you're going to fail. So for me, it was the supply chain in the industry. Um, uh, there was, in order to do business on a trade show floor, in order to get your exhibit set up, you had to deal with a multitude of people, a multitude of companies, and all of these companies worked in silos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so my vision was to create one company, that the customer comes to one company and let us become the filter, so to speak, the one source, and then we would deal with all the suppliers.
Okay.
And now, I mean, you say like, Ray, that doesn't sound like a brainchild by any means. Well, for our industry, it was.
Right.
All right. So it was supply chain management. So you had all these silos that were operating separately. You had these, the example I could give you would be like checking into a hotel. And when you wanted to book this room, and they said, Jeff, here's your order list. Place the order for your carpet, place the order for your bed, place the order for your electrical, place the order for your AV. And you had to go to all these different suppliers. You had the carpet
Right.
supplier, the bed supplier, the AV supplier, the electrical supplier, and the water supplier. And
Hmm.
that's the way it was until we started the company.
Hmm.
So
And
what
so,
we did is we took all that and took that supply chain and managed it for the end user, and we built programs and systems to do that.
okay. What are your biggest challenges have in doing that? Like, what are the biggest challenges that you had to face and overcome?
Um, so our success was pretty rapid.
Uh-huh.
And so we were a small player, undercapitalized, I'll tell you
Okay.
that.
Hmm.
Didn't think we would be this successful that quickly. So the large competitors in the industry, like it happens every day, tried to squash us.
Right.
So we had to fight through that. And the other part was facilities that had exclusives. If the
Hmm.
facility had exclusive and they were providing a certain service, they said, "I don't need you." And so they were happy with the way things were. Again, for me, my toughest objective or hurdle, I should say, was to get them to get the feel of the end user.
Right.
So if you're not the end user, you're not getting that experience, then you
Right.
don't really care. And so that was a big challenge that we had.
Hmm.
They didn't have that experience. They weren't exhibiting. They didn't know or care if an exhibitor had to go to a multitude of suppliers just to
Right.
exhibit on one show. So
Mm.
it took time. We got through it. You had to be strong. You had to, kind of going back to my coaching career, right? This was like when I put in that defense. Okay, I believed in it, and so you have to work extremely hard, and you do have to push to say no, we're going to do it, and maybe at times force things.
Right.
But once they experience them, right, the wins, they say, well, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
I like it.
It reminds me, and it kind of makes you scratch your head, the lack of customer service, to think of what is the vision of perfect service from your customer's perspective,
Hmm.
and then to provide that, which is kind of like what you seem to be doing. What's the best way that we can serve our customers is to be able to have all of these things here. Whereas, as you mentioned, some of those other players are like, we're happy with the way things are,
Hmm.
yet it's not really serving the customer well.
That's correct. That is
Yeah.
correct.
Um,
Spot on.
yeah. Would you say now it's been 40 years, right? Um,
Well, it's yeah. The first company I started was 1987, and I sold that company to my partner, and then I started this company in 1991. So 32, 33 years. Yeah.
yeah. What would you say some of the biggest lessons as a leader that you've learned over that time?
Well, I would say that stay focused. As an entrepreneur, it's the hardest thing to stay focused
Right.
because once you're successful and get things up running, um, you have another vision. Most entrepreneurs have another vision,
Hmm.
and they want to do an add-on or add an additional service, and sometimes that can be difficult on your team.
Hmm.
Um, the idea being stay narrowly focused on what you're good at,
Hmm.
introduced in a timely manner, as far as implementation of a new idea that's going to enhance your service,
Hmm.
but don't do it too quickly,
Right. You've
and
heard,
be capitalized. So we were undercapitalized. That's the other thing I would say that was a huge lesson for us,
right.
especially in the first company that I started. My partner and I started four companies in less than 2 years,
Wow.
all in the same industry, and that does not work unless you have the wherewithal and a lot of it to be able to support that.
You mentioned making sure that you're laser focused. There's a cliche about having to say no to the good to be able to say yes to the great or something
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How difficult is that? In
Very.
practicality, I mean, it's a cliche, right?
No, no,
Everybody
no,
says it, but
no, yeah, no. It is, and if you look around and you look at, um, there's the owner of I live in Dallas, Texas,
mhm,
and the owner of the Dallas Cowboys is Jerry Jones, and he is the most loved and the most hated guy.
right.
And so I was interviewed by a local newspaper here about the product that he had on the field at the time.
Mhm,
I was probably the wrong guy to interview because the way I looked at it was this: Jerry bought the team; it's his team,
mhm,
right? And I know as the fans, you need fans, but he was doing things not necessarily to intentionally prevent them from winning, but he
right,
felt that was the best thing to do.
right,
Now, I know most people know him, so that's why I bring that up. And I would say that that is not only Jerry Jones, but that's the majority of entrepreneurs,
right,
right? They look at, okay, this is what we're going to do. Again, they have to get the team to buy in, but sometimes they don't, and they push it through, and that's when failure is created.
right.
And there is a
So,
big lesson to learn from that.
yeah, no, unfortunately, probably most people don't realize it until it's too late.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Right. But then you have time and you learn from it. And again, I don't want to say he's a mentor, but living in Dallas, I watch him closely, the
Sure.
things that he does, and he's extremely successful businessman. But he, until he let go of being the coach and the general manager, he's still the general manager, but
Right.
deep into the weeds of his team, where did they not? That's when they became successful.
Mhm.
It just took them to do that, and it's very obvious now that they're doing really well. And then the other part of it is, so we are also a family-owned business,
Okay.
which the majority of American companies are.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't know that. They see the big brand names like Johnson and Johnson.
Right.
That's a family-owned business. Walmart, that's a family-owned business.
Right.
They're publicly traded, but they're still family-owned.
Right.
And so, going back to the Joneses, so he's got, family involved in his business, and just
Yeah.
as we do.
Uh-huh. Um, so
That's
obviously
that's a whole challenge within itself, right? So if you're a family-owned business, you have the challenges of your family, and that's a whole nother conversation.
yeah, I'm sure that's an issue of who does what, who gets what responsibilities, where do the mantles of leadership pass on, moving all of that stuff. Those are big challenges in family-owned businesses that people don't like to talk about.
Right, right,
And
yeah,
they're super, super difficult when families are involved. So
yeah,
we have friends that own family businesses, and as those things are getting pushed down, and this person doesn't like that person, and who gets what and everything.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's a
so just as a quick sidebar, I know that's
sure.
not part of this
No,
call,
no
but
problem.
but as a quick sidebar, one of the things that we did early on was we brought in a family business consultant,
Nice.
and he's been with us. I want to say the late '90s,
Uh-huh.
maybe mid '90s. I can't remember exactly when, but we brought him in young, young in the company, and our children at that time were fairly young,
Okay.
and so you kind of manage the expectations, that way of, I remember one of the first meetings he had. So he said to our oldest son, he said, so do you expect to be the CEO? And he said yes. And so he challenged him right there. Well, why? What's your
Mhm.
qualifications?
Mhm.
And so that was kind of like the beginning of really having good open dialogue, which is what you
Yeah.
have to have.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I think there's a principle there of just like you mentioned, managing the expectations,
Yes,
and being able to talk those through and have those things out in dialogue, as opposed to everybody just coming up with their own perception of what reality is going to look like here, or this, whatever happens. But to have the discussions, super wise to have a person come in and be able to facilitate all of those types of things.
you hit the word right. Facilitate. That's exactly right. So we have boundaries. So one of the things we didn't want to have happen was to carry the business into the family.
Hmm.
So starting the company, my expectations weren't that for my children to be in the business.
Okay.
If they wanted to be, they could, but it wasn't like my expectation.
Right.
So one of the things we wanted to avoid was that carryover from business for those that were working in the business and the ones that weren't at family functions, Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthday parties, graduations. So we have a family rule. We talk no business whatsoever at any family function.
Smart.
Conversely, we do set up scheduled meetings to where that's all we talk about. We bring
Okay.
everybody together, and the active members of the business and the passive ones, and
Okay.
bring them all together to ask questions and kind of give them the state of the union of where we are as a company and what we're doing. So,
Great. Yeah, well, I'm glad that that's working out well for you. And I know that's a
mhm.
big point of contention for many people in similar
Yes,
circumstances as you are.
yes,
Um, you guys went through an incredibly difficult time here. I don't know if if I'm understating that, right? With the
yes.
COVID shutdowns, and I'm sure as everyone realizes, the expo industry just basically imploded. Talk about what that was like for you guys. How was it going through there, and how did you manage to kind of make it through and come out on the other side and still be able to be successful?
It was brutal. One of the things I used to share with people about our industry was that our industry was recession proof.
Hmm.
And so I never worried about that at all because if one sector of the economy was going down, there was other sectors that were doing well. And so
Right.
if your portfolio of business is diversified, you manage through that down period of a one sector, let's say. So like the dot-com burst, remember that, so we had a pretty large portfolio of business in that space. You get through it because of you have other sectors of business that are doing quite well. When this happened, this was a shocker. This wasn't where you could call somebody up and ask them how they handled it
There's
when
no
when they
playbook.
went. There was none. There wasn't anyone. Sure, we had conversations with our competitors and other people that were in our space, but all of us were struggling,
Mhm.
and so we ended up the majority of the players in our industry had to seek outside financing,
Mhm.
and you had to get it one way or the other, and those that didn't went out of business. Those that didn't get the right financing are struggling right now.
Mhm.
And those that did, are doing well. And so for the first time, we have an outside investor. We never had that before,
Mhm.
but we came in, and he is an extremely good partner. He does not interfere with our business whatsoever.
Mhm.
We have our board meetings. He comes to that. He contributes on just at the board level,
Mhm.
but does not get involved in the day to day. And and it's been an extremely good experience. And because of his beliefs in us as the owners, as our executive team, and the success that we've had post pandemic, he is more than willing. He said, let's go out and buy some more companies. So
Nice.
he's yeah, it's been good that way. But I'm giving you a short answer to a long question. It was very difficult. And we are believers And so we believe that everything happened for a reason, and that
Hmm.
we believe that uh, God put us together with our investor.
Hmm.
Um, we don't think that was by happenstance. It was orchestrated by Him, and we give Him the glory for our success that we are
Hmm.
today. We're having a record historic year in 22.
Yeah. How did it come about that you got connected with the financer?
So I'm not Jeff. I'm not sure how far you want to go or how. It's a spiritual story.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Are you?
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
Okay. So my wife and I are very strong believers.
Okay.
We pray every morning in our living room. It's our morning prayer time.
Right.
And in 2020, December of 2020, we were just about out of gas. So
Hmm.
we were looking at shutting down the company because there was no way that we could continue to pay the employees. We went
Hmm.
from, just to kind of give you some numbers, we went from 275 employees down to 38 employees that were getting paid 25% of their pay.
Oh my.
And so it was at the end, and we were running out of money to pay the 25%.
Right.
And so this was a Saturday morning, and my wife wasn't feeling well, and we were supposed to go to a Christmas party that night, and we canceled. And we were sitting there, and she said that um, I have a vision. I see all the employees. I see everything. Coming together, working. And she said, I want to go. I want to go to the office. I want to go to the warehouse.
Uh-huh.
I said, well, I said, I thought you weren't feeling well. And she said, no, I want to go. We have to go now. So we took our two puppy dogs and got in the car. And as we were driving over there, we thought about the scripture and of the walls of Jericho, and
Hmm.
not having it fully memorized. We As we got to the building, we decided that we were going to drive around our building with the horn blasting 7 times.
Hmm.
And that's what we did. We drove around the building 7 times with our horn. And we got out of the car and we went inside our facility. And inside of our facility, we have what we call an inspiration wall.
Hmm.
And that inspiration wall has scriptures on it and famous quotes that inspire.
Hmm.
And so we openly laid our hands on that wall and prayed out loud. And her, during even that time period, she saw people smiling, happy, in back working.
Hmm.
So we left, went home, and the next day came. Next day came. There was nothing. There was not like this magic miracle happened.
Right.
Nothing like that happened. And then I think it was probably like that Wednesday that week. Our daughter called and said, "Dad, my next door neighbor knows that you got to be going through a struggling time, and she would like to invest in your company."
Oh my.
And I said, "Oh, Rachel," I said, "well, that's so nice of her." I said, "But you know, we need a lot of money." I said,
Right.
I said, I don't think she realizes the amount of money that we
Right.
need." And she goes, "Well, she's read your book twice, and
Hmm.
she believes in you, and she's probably, she's financially pretty well off." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I'll be happy to talk to her." So, in that wasn't the only thing that was happening at that point. I was still looking to raise capital.
Hmm.
I was trying to get a group of people together so that not any one person had to put all the money in. So I was working on a project anyway, and so I reached out to her, and I asked her. I said, "Do you have any experience in investing in privately owned companies? And she
Hmm.
said, no. And I said, do you have any advisors that can help you? I said, do you have a lawyer? Do you have a wealth manager or something like that? She goes, well, I've got my wealth manager. I said, great. And I said, well, why don't you send him this package? And I said, and then you can look at it from, or he can maybe advise you on the risks that are involved.
Right.
And so a couple of days went by. Her oldest daughter was having a their first grandchild, and her other daughter came by and saw the proposal, and she said, and she was interested in getting into the trade show business. So sidebar call said, would you, my daughter's very interested in the business. Would you?
Right.
And I said, be happy to talk to her and visit with her.
Right.
And then she said, oh, by the way, uh, I want to invest $1 million in your company.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. And that is, I would, that was not, we needed more, but that was a very shock to me to
Yeah.
have, somebody who don't know, no relationship with, and just said, I want to invest $1 million. But she said, she asked me if I would be interested in talking to her ex-husband, who happened to have some other interest in the related businesses in the trade show industry. I said,
Hmm.
sure, I'd be happy to talk to him. And we did. Um, we met with him and just talked to him generally. And he said, okay, I'd like for you to talk to my advisors. So I had a meeting with the advisors, and this is like the week of Christmas.
Right.
And then on Christmas Eve, he sent an email or a letter email and said, Merry Christmas, Ray. We got a deal.
Oh my goodness.
And I know. And so
Christmas
he
Eve, did you say that was?
Christmas Eve. And he goes, listen, I'm really busy right now. I'm trying to close a few other things before the end of the year. He says, would you mind writing the letter of intent and
Hmm.
sending it to my attorney? And I said, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wrote it the next week. They came back in the middle of the week and tweaked a few things, and um, sent it back and said Happy New Year,
Yeah.
and signed it.
Hmm.
And so that is a miracle in and of itself.
What a
And that's,
story.
yeah,
Really incredible to hear.
incredible.
I know. I mean, and I'm sure you are well aware of how many other companies in your area had to go under
Yes,
as a
yes,
result of that, and the fact
yes,
that you were able to, sustain that
yes.
is
Well,
really
it's all glory is God's.
right.
It's it was His totally. So I forgot one other part of the story. So we went back in that week, and we went back and actually read the scripture on Jericho, right? So
Hmm.
it was, they walked around the wall for every day, once a day, for 7 days, and on the seventh day they blew the trumpet, right?
Hmm.
So we went back the following Saturday and drove around just one time
Just one time.
with the horn blowing, and my wife, raising her hands and praying. So
Yeah,
it was a good biblical lesson for us.
for sure. What a great story. Um, Walking through the crises, and having to lose what, 75% of your employee staff,
Mhm.
more than,
More than
what lessons did you learn as a leader in that time going through that?
transparency.
Hmm.
Okay, being truthful, not giving him, hey, do this for me, and I'll do this for you, because there was no I'll do this for you, because there was no guarantee.
Right.
And we were very open with them, and we had, people said, I can't wait any longer, and we said, understand. And they took jobs with other companies, not in our space but outside of our business, and a lot of them, once we reopened and came back and got
Hmm.
working, a lot of them came back, and that speaks volumes for our leaders here in the company. In the culture that we have here, knowing the beliefs that they knew that we as owners would never ever furlough them
Right.
or cut their pay or do anything if we didn't have to.
Right.
So they just believed it was part of our culture, and that you build. It's not a flip the switch or clap your hands and it all happens. This is years of building a culture of beliefs that I'm treating people with dignity and integrity, and helping them out when um, there's times that you don't have to as owners, but you do. You do
Hmm.
things for people. So we look at it as one large family,
Hmm.
and we work with all of our employees that way. And as you know, in any family, you through life, you have ups and downs, and so it's how you treat those people when they're going through maybe a mom or dad that are passing away, or maybe they're going through a divorce. And so they're not going to give you their best. They're not going to give you their A game.
Right.
And so you work with them on that, and
Hmm.
and it pays off, when you have times like this. So we've had in the history of the company, pre-COVID, we had several people that left us, and we've had 18 people come back.
Hmm.
That number now, because of COVID, is well up into the 30s now. People
Right.
that left and come back.
Hmm.
So that's just it's just a tribute to our leaders, and the culture and practicing it. The other thing is we're very kind of an old fashioned type company. By that I mean we have three generations of people working here,
Hmm.
from the same family.
Right.
So that's just, as owners, we didn't do that. That was the grandmom to the kids, to then to
Right.
the grandkids. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. You have established a culture, it seems like, amongst your people where they trust the leadership
Yes.
because and I'll use the term servant leader, that you're there to really serve your people and not the idea of an entitled leader. And there's so many examples today of entitled leaders that expect this or that, and it's kind of like, do as I say, don't do as I do.
Mhm.
But to be able to just have that integrity and transparency over such a long time, is
Mhm.
what builds that into the culture, so that when you have to weather or endure a crisis, the foundation is solid.
Agree, and I write about that in my book about servant leadership here in the company. So, if you think about it as a pyramid, most companies, the CEO is at the top of the pyramid, and everything goes down. So, in a servant leadership company, the pyramid is inverted,
Hmm.
and the people are on top. The
Okay.
CEO is at the bottom, right?
Right.
And so you're feeding up. That's exactly right.
Hmm.
And so we are, a company that is very open with our beliefs. As I mentioned, the
Hmm.
inspiration wall. We have quarterly prayer meetings as well.
Hmm.
So where it's all volunteer, don't have to be there, but we'll do that, and those are very moving, because people feel comfortable sharing some things that are happening in their personal life that they're asking for prayer for.
Right.
And so that's all part of the culture as well.
You mentioned your book a couple times, so just share the name of it and
Sure,
how did you get started and why write that?
there it is.
There it is.
Lessons of an Entrepreneur. I don't know if you can see it,
Hmm.
but that's just it's just people over the years, and the stories, and knowing the ups and downs that we had as a company. Um, they just said, wow, Ray, why don't you share that?
Right.
And so again, part of my servant leadership was to do that, was just to share it with other uh, entrepreneurs, other, managers. You didn't have to be necessarily, you can be an entrepreneur, or you are a leader within a division a lot of times,
Right.
right? And you can do a lot of things that I write about in the book within your division. Um, Even if they're not endorsed, by the company you're working for. So it's just, again, it goes back to my coaching days. It goes, it's just a carryover there. It's all about, getting to know your people, understanding them, and working with them, trying to make them better.
Hmm.
And people know that
Yeah.
it's an unwritten word, right?
Hmm.
So I just shared a lot about the lessons that my failures, of which are many, in the book, and how you deal with that.
Hmm.
So you
Well,
look at, one thing that I tell people is like, people look at failure like, I don't want to fail, I don't want to fail. And then I say, well, look at some athletes. I said, look at baseball players. So they fail 2/3 of the time,
right.
right? 2/3 of the time they're failing. I said, now, do you think if they dwell upon that they wouldn't be successful?
Right.
No, but the rules of the boundaries that they play in, that's it. So if they are successful 1 out of 3, they're considered a great player. You look at the NBA, 60% they're failing.
Right.
So you look at those types of things, right? And uh, so that's what I mean by dwell upon your positives. Don't or accentuate your positives. Don't dwell upon your negatives, right?
Right.
Those are failures. So if every time I shot the ball in basketball and I was only going to get it 40% of the time, then I'd never shoot the ball again.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, you think about in life, in Jeff, and yourself, and you think about people that you have known and that has had an influence over you. Whether that be a teacher or a manager or someone in your church. That it's usually those folks, and it's not the ones that you think maybe you would get the knowledge from, but it's the people that are probably the least that you would expect,
For
but
sure.
had an influence in you. And unfortunately, some of those influences could be negative as well, right?
Hmm.
You can have negative influence, and so we try to work on that very hard, not to be negative.
Hmm. Yeah, I think if I look back, the biggest influences in my life were very minor events and minor situations that changed the course of my life, which you,
Mhm,
you you never would think. But
mhm,
I've often said, for me, it's almost a little bit scary, but to look back and to go, if I wouldn't have done that, made a decision at a lunch table to
mhm.
meet somebody here,
Right.
my whole life would be in a different position. And I
Mhm,
think that's where you go back to that God has a plan, and he walks you through that, and
mhm,
those little things that
mhm,
seem small or insignificant
mhm.
can be such um, major effects on the
Mhm.
outcomes of your life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no doubt. I share with people, I have a go-to scripture. When and that's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
mhm,
Trust in the Lord with your whole heart and lean not on your own understandings. In all ways acknowledge him and he'll direct your paths.
right.
But,
Yeah.
but you have to be obedient, and you have
Right.
to have patience, because it's going to be on his time, not your
Well, you have to
time.
trust.
Right, trust him, right?
You
Trust him
have
with
to
all your will,
trust.
right, yeah.
Yeah,
And so that was all part of it. And I will tell you, when we were going through this, it was easier said than done.
I'm sure.
Okay, yeah,
No, I'm sure
easier
it was
said than done.
super stressful in the midst of it
Yeah,
all. You don't know
okay,
what's happening. That's just the thing about it, is you're walking through the middle of it. It's kind of like that. There's that old poem about footprints, footprints in the sand, and
yes,
and you when you're walking through it, you're like, where is God in the midst of it? You know, it's only when you get beyond it that you look back and recognize the hand of God in your life as you've walked through the difficult times and the difficult circumstances that God was there carrying you through. So,
Amen. Amen to that. You know, we talked about the pandemic. So in January of 20, we as a company made the largest acquisition in our history in January of 20.
right.
My wife was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh my.
And in March of 20 is when the pandemic hit and everything started shutting down. So, I mean, it was like one after another. I mean, the mountain kept on getting higher and
Right.
higher and higher, you know. And so you just have to, as I kept on telling our guys, don't look at the mountain. Please don't look at it. It's huge. But let's just take it a step at a time. Let's go through one day. And the other part was, you know, there was the anger part, right? That you're mad at the government, you're mad at, you know, things that are taking place or decisions that are being made. And I said, hey guys, let's not get bitter over this. Let's get better.
Right.
I said, we can be bitter. We can, again, are we going to dwell upon that negative? Or are we going to try to look for ways to get out of this? You know?
Yeah. I think when you get on the other side of that valley and you look back and see what you've come through, you know, many times people don't want to experience the difficulties and hardships in life.
Yes, they don't,
And
right?
they try to, but those very same people, when you ask them, hey, what were your biggest areas of growth in your life? They're always tied to walking through those challenges,
Yes, the valleys,
you
right?
know?
Absolutely, yes.
And you ask them, hey, would you
Right.
trade it back? You know, after
Yeah.
getting through it, would you wish that you wouldn't have had to go through it? Many times, most times I would say, people say, you know what? I wouldn't trade it back because of that made me the person I am today. I've
Yes.
grown so much through that. And so
We have. You're 100% correct.
yeah,
If you really are, and I will tell you, as most entrepreneurs, you sometimes get into the I word, right? And so that is a negative, you know, that you don't want to get into,
right,
because I can't do anything.
right,
We can, the
right.
team can,
Yeah,
you know, through you know, the grace of God, you can accomplish a lot.
yeah.
You know.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. You've been super great.
Yeah.
It's been great to talk to you,
Yes,
and
I enjoyed it. Yes.
appreciated you coming on. Your book, we will put the links for that
Okay.
on the website, and I'm gonna need to get like a bio from you and a picture or something like that, so I can throw it up on the website as well.
Sure.
So I'll be in contact with you on email on that. But thanks so much for coming
Sure.
on.
Sure. Yeah. And any of your listeners, if they want to contact you, and if they have some special questions or personal questions, or, you know, either about, you know, having a faith-based company, or just through just business lessons that I've learned over
Sure.
these years, I'd be happy to share it with them.
That's wonderful. I appreciate that. And thank you so much, Ray.
Okay. All right. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Have a good
All
one.
right. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Sometimes the silence speaks when I don't have the words.